The dreaded day has come where my tube amp doesn't work anymore. That's Uncle Steve up there. That's a heavy mofo. That is a heavy mofo. All right. I'll turn this flashlight on. All right, like I said, I already narrowed it down to it's got to be a fuse, because I'll tell you what happened actually is I left this tube amp on for like 24 hours accidentally, and I guess you can't do that. It wasn't making noise, it was just on. So I'm going to push in with the flathead, turn, it's popping out. I looked at the main fuse. You see the metal nuclear fusion rod in there. No, perfectly fine. Okay, so I'm putting that back in. Push in, turn to the right. Then I pulled out the HT fuse. What do you see there? See like some smoke and a blown fuse in there. So yeah, I was so happy, you know, because who doesn't want to just have this be a problem? You can see the size difference, and you can imagine the cost difference. You got this little tube compared to the Chicago skyline. So yeah, I was happy that it was this little fuse. Everyone knows you can't go online and buy a fuse for half of a penny. What you got to do is buy a 200-piece set. That's how they get you. That's fine. Okay, so we got a bunch of matches here. I think all of them at the bottom, as you can see by reading, like I did not do, but if you were to be able to be a person that can read, you would see that they're all 5 by 20 millimeters, just like our busted one here. The fuse that goes into the HT socket on the Marshall JCM 2100 DSL, 1 amp, see on there, timed. So it's a slow breaking fuse, which explains why when I left it on for over 24 hours it broke. So really all you need then, what's the main one, just out of curiosity? 4 amp. Okay, so if the main one is 4, in the HT, whatever the hell that means, that's not important. It's obviously a secondary fuse, or a primary probably. There you go, nice fresh 1 amper. And if it doesn't work, so what? It blows right away, and then we'll put in the 5. Just pop that little mofo down in there. It doesn't really go down far at all. It just kind of barely sticks in the bottom. So this thing's just kind of like a placeholder. Nothing clicks or really fits in. Then we're gonna just line it up with our flat head there. Slowly sink it in. Depress it like me. Turn it up. It'll click back up perfectly vertical. Now you just kind of see what's up. I'm gonna put it back on my stack and see if it makes noise. So that worked before. That's fine. Do you hear that hum? That hiss? That is literally music to my ears right now. Because I didn't hear that before. You're going to know when it's a fuse or a power issue because you'll hear nothing. Standby is on. And you hear nothing. I'm very happy. So I'm going to let the tube warm up briefly. I think it was like $12 or something for 200 things. Not a biggie. Fuck, how's this? Subscribe to me and tell me how awesome of a job I did. I'm going to send you one for $1. How's that? If you live in the continental U.S. of United States. Alrighty. Sounds like a deal. Alright, got our passive guitar plugged in. That way there's no battery issues. Is being accused of me. Everything I think is set up. I replaced the HT fuse. Remember, give me a comment, subscribe to me. I'll send you a replacement HT fuse for free. $1. $1 US. And if you unsubscribe from me after I send it to you, that's just fine. That's just fine. I'll just take you to small claims court. No, I'm just kidding. All right, standby is coming off. Oh, yes, it was the HT fuse. I'm very happy. Alright, now I kicked out my little Tube Screamer Mini. Got the noise gate on. Happy little dog right here. You know, the first thing you want to check, obviously, is that when you turn it on, that'll be red. Standby off, just even with the power. Make sure, this is another rookie mistake, make sure the volume's not down to 0 from the last time you did that accidentally. Up the volume. Make sure the gain's not all the way down. Turn that up. Turn everything up. Power, standby, volume on. None of that's working. Your power supply, you're going to want to make sure that's plugged in and your power supply is working. So try a different outlet. Basically, a good way to bypass anything related to pedals is to just take the source directly coming from your guitar and plug it right into the input. Now, at that point, the only thing that could be wrong is if you have active pickups like these EMGs, you're going to want to make sure you change out the battery, the 9-volt battery. And if all those steps don't work, a lot of times the jack, a lot of times with a passive guitar, I will, if you have a passive guitar, go to that to see if it's just a battery in your guitar pickups. But with this one, it's kind of an older guitar, so this input jack will get loose, you can hear it. And then electronic wires in here can fall apart, cross, and that could be a problem. However, if that's your problem with an amp not making any noise, you're going to hear a lot of crackling and popping and hissing and noise coming from your speakers. So another step to check for is to make sure that that your instrument cable in the back is nice and snug, and this one is nice and snug going into the back of the amp. If you've checked every connection and there's no hissing or noise, because as you know, when you turn on a powerful, or really any amp, there should be some sort of hissing coming through the cabinet to let you know that it's trying to send a signal. Because if you have a bad connection in the bottom of the guitar, you're still going to hear some sort of noise. If you've tried all of the 97 steps and things that I've thought about, I'm sure I'm missing a few, your amp's dead, and your amp is the culprit. God, that took forever to explain. And again, this is for people that have just started guitar. If you guys have been playing and you're like, oh, this is the basics. Dude, well, if you're 14 or whatever, you know, this is not the basics. So frickin', you know, go to like Ola's channel if you want. We're at the point where you looked at the glass tubes inside. Flip it around. I've looked at the glass tubes inside, the power tubes in the preamp. I've looked at all these tubes in here. None of them are burnt out, okay? So then I was like, okay, well, it's got to be the fuse. And here is what happens when your fuse burns out on this Marshall JCM 2000 DSL. It's in the back right by the power supply, main input. Oh, mains input, that's what the Brits call it. Now, one other thing to check for, you know, again, you're still going to hear noise, but just make sure you're not plugged into the 16 ohm only. If you're going into like a 4 ohm amp, make sure if you're going into it, this really doesn't matter. It's still going to make noise, but I'm just saying it's another way to, another way it could be dead on noise and your amp's actually perfectly fine is if your effects loop, let's see, I put a little white out here and where it's supposed to go, the destination chord, you can have these reversed in your effects loop. So just reverse these. A better way to do that is to take it out and just unplug your effects loop, whatever you got going on. If you've taken that pedal out and there's still no noise, you're coming over here,